Hi everyone, I'm Amanda, and I run the blog Major and Fangirl, where I review different television shows every week, such as Once Upon a Time, Criminal Minds, and Sleepy Hollow. Last week I reviewed one of the more recent episodes of Criminal Minds, and so this week I decided to go back to where I'm originally at, and so I reviewed the 20th episode of Season 8, called Alchemy, and this episode is special because it is directed by Matthew Gray Gubler, who plays Dr. Spencer Reid, my favorite character. So awesome. So I was very excited for this episode, and I was paying special close attention to like the camera angles, to the costumes, and just like what characters said what, and just because Matthew Gray Gubler directs usually the more creepier episodes, and he has this particular way like doing things that I just find very interesting. So I was paying attention to that a lot during this episode. Like so basically, this episode entitled Alchemy, these men, about their 20s, these young men in their 20s were being found in these different spots, and their bodies were like cut up into pieces and just dispersed everywhere, and they found like these weird markings on one of them, and they were poisoned with this weird type of, I can't pronounce it, and so it was pretty creepy, to be honest. And the team discovered that the unsub is a woman who had recently lost a child, and they believe she's using these men to get pregnant in order to substitute the son or daughter that she had lost. We find out it's a son, hence why I said son. And then later they find out that she actually has a partner who's a man who ended up killing another person, a girl, who discovered what they were doing. So it was kind of a weird episode, which again is probably why Matthew Gray Gubler directed it. And one of the things that this episode was, it's hitting towards the end of the season, which means all of the different storylines are coming to an end. And like I said when I reviewed the first episode from season 8, well, the first episode that I reviewed from season 8, that this season has an overarching story arc, which is unusual for Criminal Minds. And so all of the loose ends are now being tied up, and so they're again bringing up Maeve, who's Reed's girlfriend. They're bringing up her death, and then Reed's grief and mourning, and there is a scene between Reed and Rossi, which it was heartbreaking, and I probably would have started crying had I not known that I was going to be recording this video. I probably would have been crying, but I was trying very hard not to cry. It was very sweet, and having Reed open up to Rossi and just share his dream and how he's like afraid to dance with Maeve, and it's just it was really great. And I liked how Rossi's becoming the Gideon, because in the earlier seasons 1 and 2, this character Gideon was like Reed's father figure, and then Gideon left. And then now here comes Rossi, and now Rossi's stepping into the role that I'm pretty sure that if Gideon were still in the show, he would have stepped into. And so I thought that was very, very sweet, and it was a really great scene. It was very well acted, and it was just, it was really good. And like I said, Matthew Gray Gubler usually directs the creepy episodes, and this episode sure fit that. So the very first scene, I originally thought that we were seeing the unsub, which has happened a lot of times. We see the unsub before the team does, and we see like what he or she goes through. And so I was like, okay, so the episode opens up and there's this guy, he's having these like hallucinations or something. So I'm like, oh, okay, so maybe he's the unsub. No, he's not the unsub. He actually turned out to be the victim, and so that kind of threw me for a loop. But this dream that he had, he walked out of his hotel room. Well, we didn't know it was a hotel room at the time, but now I know it's a hotel room. And then he walks to the right, and then because he hears this noise, his voice calling to him, and it sounds like a little girl's voice. And then you see like he just looks down the hallway, and then I just remember going, wait, hold on a second, did the wall move? It looks like the wall just kind of did like this little, it's just like, oh, did the wall move? And apparently the character thought the same thing I did, because right when I thought that, the character moved to the wall, and then he started peeling back the wallpaper, and it looked like a muscle, like from like a heart or something, and just going. It was like it was honestly, it was creepy. I didn't expect to see that. They just. That's one of the strengths I think of this episode, was that there were different camera angles and there were different. They just had different ways of expressing things. Instead of hinting at things, they actually showed things. So like they were not afraid to show the hallucinations, which I thought was pretty cool. It was interesting, like the heart in the wall. And that was another one. That was, well, the first one. And then what was another hallucination that we saw? Oh, the last victim. Luckily, he survived. So spoiler alert, he survives. But he's taken into the room by the female Unsub, and then he sees what looks like. I thought it looked like a horse, but with antlers. It literally looked like a horse head with antlers and this big cape, and it was like going. No, seriously, it was like, and the camera was shaking. It was just like, is this even real? But I already knew that the characters, the victims, were experiencing hallucinations. So I'm like, oh, this is probably another hallucination. And yes, it was. It was the, excuse me. It was like a stuffed animal of some sort melding with the male Unsub's face, and so. That was actually pretty interesting because like it wasn't a horse on the wall, but it was a horse in the hallucination, so that was pretty interesting. And then another thing that was pretty cool was the camera angles. The camera angles were interesting. I'm using that word a lot. Sorry. The camera angles were different. It kind of reminded me of like this quote that one of the characters says, that that people are unaware of the darkness that's like always there, and it could always creep in. And that I think that's something that Matthew Gray Gubler was doing with his camera angles, because like you'd see characters like off in the corner, and this like the girl, her name I believe is Amber, who unfortunately was murdered by the male Unsub when she's trying to get inside the door, inside the mysterious room 209, the hotel room. The camera's very, very far back, and then it just starts getting closer and closer and closer and closer, kind of like something's creeping up. But then she just walks straight past you, and you're like, well, you mean the camera? She just walks straight past the camera. And usually when the camera goes like close to the actors, that usually means that there's something following them, but there wasn't. And so I thought that was kind of unique. It was kind of unusual. And they did the exact same thing again with when her body was found, that you had AJ Cook as JJ, Shamar Moore as Morgan, and then you had the local FBI sheriff person, and they were just in the corner, maybe like over here, and then the camera would just go from like right here, and it would go to like right at them, like if my fingernails were their backs, go right to them, but it wouldn't go really close. It would kind of spread out a bit, and then it would just go over, and then you'd see them. And so I just thought it was kind of interesting, and it felt like a representation, like a not really physical representation, but kind of like an artistic representation of the Unsub's quote that the darkness is always creeping in. And I think because I kind of know what's going to happen a little bit in the season finale, because obviously they're going to have to bring the replicator, because the replicator, excuse me, I can't talk today, has been throughout the whole season. He has to appear physically in the season finale. So I think this kind of might be foreshadowing, or it just might be some sort of representation of that quote. So I found that to be pretty interesting, and I was kind of disappointed that the Unsub was very easy to be picked out. Like I kind of figured the second the Unsub found the latest victim at the bar, I was like, no, that's totally the Unsub, because she used unusual terms, and because I know that this is Matthew Gray Gubler's direction, that it's probably going to be something creepy, and then kind of something out of place, kind of out of time. So like previous episodes that he had, that he's directed, like one one of them was another murdering couple, and they looked like they belonged in the 50s. And then another episode he directed, the place looked like they had the same actress who played Drusilla from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and so that time period that Drusilla's from, it's kind of what things looked like. And so it was definitely people out of time. So that was kind of a similar thing. And so that's why when the unsub said Gallant, I'm like, no, this is the unsub. That's kind of because I kind of recognize that. And so I was disappointed that it was easy to pick, but then again, I'm kind of impressed that I noticed the connections between the three. So yeah. But on a good note, I thought it was, even though Reed was dealing with all of this grief and that was really sad, he was funny because he was actually trying to use technology, and he does not like technology. And so I thought it was very funny to have some episodes, some scenes like that. It kind of lightened the episode. But overall, it was an alright episode. I wouldn't say it was the absolute best, and I would not say it was the worst. I would rather watch this than Pariahville. That is for sure. I would totally watch this over Pariahville. And I think this is a really great episode directed by Matthew Gray Gubler. I'm very impressed with his directing. I really like it. I like how he does things that are not usually done. Like another episode he did, and it included making people into human marionettes, which are basically like human puppets, and it was really hard to watch. But there's like a scene where he actually had the unsub had the victim dance, and he was like moving. It looked like a real puppet, but it was a real person, and it was kind of hard to make that connection that the puppet was a person. It just looked so puppet-like. It was very, very unusual, very different. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm very excited with episodes that he directs. And so I think I would give this episode, if I were going on a scale of 1 to 10, 7.5, I think. Not quite an 8, not quite a 7, somewhere in the middle. So it's an interesting episode. I use that word a lot. And thank you for watching this. And next week, hopefully, crossing fingers, I will be able to review Sleepy Hollow or Once Upon a Time. I will probably end up reviewing Once Upon a Time because I've seen previews. I'm behind on it, so I'm gonna have to catch up. But I've seen pictures, and it looks like a bunch of stuff is gonna go down in this next episode. So, and I heard it's a 2-hour one, so I'm probably gonna end up watching this and watching Once Upon a Time, and then after that I will go back and I will review Sleepy Hollow because I've been depriving those of you who watch this that are Sleepy Hollow fans. I apologize to you guys for not watching more episodes and reviewing those, and then I apologize for you guys that watch this that are Once Upon a Time fans who, because I've done Criminal Minds multiple times in a row. So I apologize, and I will try to go back to one of these either of these two for next week. So until then.